Hi y'all! You might have recently seen a very famous British man drive this exact same Ford Bronco Stroppe, same license plate and everything, on a Texas highway, and then say it sucks something serious. And while I deeply respect James May, that's just not true. So let's talk about why.
The Ford Bronco is an icon, thanks to both its history and its capability off-road. It's a big, boxy, body-on-frame off-roader that, despite its fame, disappeared from the American car market for nearly 3 decades. But it returned a few years ago, ready to off-road in the modern world. The new Bronco can crawl, it can climb, it can traverse, it can even swim a little. And today, I think it can prove James May wrong.
This is the 2025 Ford Bronco Stroppe, a big, bad $78,000 Bronco Sasquatch with a really expensive paint job. And I'm Alanis King. Let's go for a drive and stick around for the end of this video to get this Bronco's full report card. I usually book the cars I review for this channel a few weeks in advance, and I was very surprised to see after booking this Bronco that James May had it in Texas. And I was even more surprised to see that he just drove it on the highway, then said it sucked. That is like taking a Corvette ZR1 to the Rubicon Trail and going, man, that sucks, it didn't make it very far. It's just not the right environment for that car. And while I usually just review cars on my own, I figured this would be a really good opportunity to do a little bit of point-counterpoint and also discuss the hot take industry when it comes to reviewing cars. Before we do that, we have to learn about the Bronco itself. Ford originally launched the Bronco in 1965 as a competitor to other utilitarian 4x4s at the time, like the International Harvester Scout and the Jeep CJ, which is a predecessor to the Wrangler. But Ford marketed this thing, which has its roots in military vehicles, as at home, on the road, and off. The original Bronco lasted 31 years and 5 generations, and during that time it served as the Pope-mobile. It also weathered the oil crisis and was in a very famous police chase. Also during that time, it got a baby sibling aimed at the compact SUV market. That baby sibling was called the Bronco 2, and at the time it was based on the Ford Ranger pickup platform. The big Bronco back then was based on the F-150. More than 2 decades after the original Bronco left the market in June 1996, Ford launched this, the 6th generation Bronco, and this was a big deal. It came out in 2021, and not only was it an answer to our really only option on the American market for a normal priced utilitarian off-roader, the Jeep Wrangler, but it also entered our market at a time when Americans were just going wild for crossovers and SUVs, which we still are. Along with the big Bronco came a new baby Bronco, the Bronco Sport. The current Bronco Sport is based on the Escape crossover platform, and this big Bronco is based on the Ford Ranger midsize pickup platform. And even though that baby Bronco is based on the Escape crossover, it does have some pretty capable trims. I was at the launch of this 6th generation Bronco in June 2021, and it was fascinating to watch the American car market expand and change in real time, because for so long, our option for a new normal budget off-roader on this market was the Jeep Wrangler, and Americans are all about options. So adding the Bronco to that was a big deal. Not only that, but it was at the forefront of this modern day movement we see on the American car market, which is moving toward more rugged and more rugged looking vehicles. When everyone was locked inside in the early 2020s, people wanted to get out. They wanted to be adventurous. They wanted to feel adventurous. And that has carried over into the following years. So we have more and more vehicles on this market that can and look like they can go outside. It ranges from the big body-on-frame vehicles like this Bronco to the unibody vehicles like the Honda Passport Trail Sport, and even just appearance packages that we see on a lot of other other cars that make them look more outdoorsy than they are. One of the things I absolutely loved about that 2021 Bronco launch was the fact that it was so hands-on. Not only were there tons of displays of Ford-backed aftermarket parts, which there were about 200 of those at the time at launch, but they also had all of these stations where they were teaching us how easy it is to disassemble and reassemble this car. Not only can you get this roof off with a few flicks of roof latches and literally lift it up and be open air, but also all of these fenders that stick out, you can take all of them off with little flips of latches underneath the fender, pull them away, and then you can go off-roading without scratching them, or if you do scratch them, you can easily replace them. This Ford Bronco Stroppe has a 2.7-liter twin-turbocharged V6 engine that makes 330 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. That goes through a 10-speed automatic transmission to all four wheels. And some fun facts about this engine bay and area: we have no hydraulic hood struts, so you gotta lift it yourself. We also have no engine cover, so you see a lot of wiring. And the final assembly point on this vehicle is Michigan. I would now like to welcome you to our brand new segment, Alanis's Tour de Cool Features. And we're gonna start with what this Bronco is all about. This is a Stroppe edition. It honors Bill Stroppe, an American Motorsports Hall of Famer who built a lot of off-road Broncos and won the Baja 1000. Our next cool feature is that when you open your gas cap to get gas because the fuel mileage isn't great, you're gonna see established 1966 and some cute little Bronco outlines. Our next cool feature is that you have these side steps. They are removable and have integrated rock rails, but unlike a lot of other parts of this car, you're gonna need to work a little harder to get them off. This Bronco Stroppe has the Sasquatch package on it, which means you get 35-inch beefy tires, which is the American way and allows you to treat curbs like they are not even there. And you get these 17-inch beadlock capable wheels. Beadlock capable wheels basically allow you to lower your PSI in this tire really, really low without worrying that you're just going to pop off of the wheel. And that's good, because when you're off-roading and you lower that PSI, you can do a lot of helpful things, such as increase your contact patch on the ground and get more traction so you can get going if you're stuck. We have now made it to our last stop on Alanis's Tour de Cool Features, and I want to mention that the paint scheme on this Bronco honors Bill Stroppe's Ford Broncos, including this matte black hood. The idea back then with the matte black hood was that when you're racing in the desert and it's really sunny, this, instead of reflecting the sun back in your eyes, would actually kind of shield your eyes from all of the reflections and shininess out there. I will say that on this particular Bronco, we have had to clean the water spots off of this hood every day, and it kind of looks like the ocean floor. So if it were sunny outside, I could tell you whether it was reflective, but it hasn't been sunny at all. And our last little bit is that up here, our front camera in between this Bronco logo is white, and I think that's very odd because every space between the letters is black, and I really wish they would have painted this black too. Because we are driving an orange, blue, and white Bronco today, I figured I would wear my favorite shade of orange, the University of Texas, from our partner, Homefield Apparel. Homefield has all of the best stuff from your favorite schools, motorsports teams, the Indy 500, and it's all officially licensed. I absolutely love all of my apparel from Homefield, and I wear it all the time, whether I'm on video or not. And just remember that if your football team did not make the college football playoffs this year, there's always next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the next 20 years after that. And hopefully they'll make it one day. But in the meantime, you can go to homefieldapparel.com like me. The Monroney on this particular 2025 Ford Bronco Stroppe starts at $75,635 American dollars, and after fees, the total price is $77,665. Now, some of these are going for under MSRP new. I found some online for about $68,000 American dollars. So if you are very passionate about this paint scheme, that does exist in a lower price. I say lower because I went back and I looked at the original base model Bronco price from the debut in June 2021, and it was $28,500 American dollars. Then I went and looked at the current base model Bronco. It is $39,995. And there are some upgrades. There's a bigger infotainment screen and stuff like that. But that is a 40% price increase on the lowest level new Bronco that you can get. And if that $28,500 number had just increased with inflation, it would be $34,000 even. $39,995 is a lot. And it's a shame that the base model Bronco is now so much more expensive than the base model was just a few years ago. On a happier note, we have now reached my favorite part of any car review, which is how many Atlantises can fit in this Ford Bronco Stroppe's trunk area. Now, while I get in the trunk, I like to talk about the key. And the thing with Ford keys is that anytime I have a run of Fords, I never really know what I'm driving because all the keys look exactly the same. So I go and I get them off of my key holder and I go, what car's in the driveway again? I don't know. I literally have to look at the logo on the key because all the keys are shaped the same. They're hard, they're plasticky, they're not very pretty, and I really wish that Ford would make the keys better because I don't think it's a huge investment, and I think it just makes people feel better about their purchase to have a nicer key. And now we get in this very packed trunk area, and this honestly is one Atlantis. But the thing is, for such a big vehicle to have not much room back here is very surprising. It's time to drive the 2025 Ford Bronco Stroppe. And in this driving section, I want to cover a bunch of things. First, we will start with styling and comfort. Then we will move to the different controls you have in this vehicle. Then I want to talk about how it drives off-road. Then I want to do a little bit of point-counterpoint with James May's review. Then I want to talk about on-road driving. And finally, I just want to talk about the Bronco overall and also what happens when you're on the internet and the internet rewards hot takes and having really definitive opinions on whether something is good or bad, instead of going, it's good at a lot of things and it's also bad at some things. We will start with styling and comfort. On the outside of this vehicle, I love the way it's styled. I think the 6th generation Bronco has wonderful, pretty nice styling that will hold up over time. The boxiness is great. And also this paint job, I will say, is more impressive than a lot of Ford paint jobs I see. A lot of times when I see a Ford paint job, there's a lot of orange peel in it. Orange peel is a wavy texture that happens on the surface of the paint when you apply it in a certain way, and it doesn't look so great. And I often run into a lot of orange peel on Ford vehicles. This has some orange peel, but not as much as I'm used to seeing elsewhere. When we move into the inside, I love that the inside of this vehicle matches the outside. We have white on the dashboard, orange stitching, we have blue to just match the paint scheme we have going on the outside. I like the fonts that are in here. We have these geometric square Bronco fonts. We also have this really funky nameplate that has this bizarre font that looks like a putt-putt course from 1999. I really like that. I think it's pretty cool. And when we look at this dashboard, yes, the big white trim piece on the dashboard is plasticky, but I think it works for what this car is, which is meant to be utilitarian. So when you see that white, I feel like if it were black, I wouldn't like it nearly as much, but because it's white, it looks different, and it also looks really easy to clean and wash off, especially if you take it off-roading. And it needs to be cleaned right now because there's a spot above the B on the Bronco. The seats in this Bronco Stroppe are marine grade vinyl, and Ford has made a big deal out of advertising the fact that it puts this marine grade vinyl in Broncos. And I think that is fantastic because when you think of marine grade vinyl, you think of vinyl boat seats and how they just get constantly splashed and beat up on the water all day and they end up being fine. That is great if you want to take this off-road and you don't want to worry about having to wash it out or get it wet or just really beat up these seats. seats when you're off-roading this vehicle. I love that Ford does this and makes these easy to clean and easy to just get all wet. And if you get the inside of this vehicle wet, you really don't have to worry too much, because we have these rubber floor mats that are easy to rinse off. And then under those floor mats, I'm able to pick up this driver's side floor mat and undo a drain plug. And that drain plug can then drain the water out of this vehicle. It's just so smart to have that and to allow people to clean out their vehicles easily and not worry about trapping a bunch of water in them. Not only do we have that, but on the backs of these front seats, there is this checkerboard pattern. It's basically like a cork board in your garage wall. It allows you to hang different tools up there and basically store whatever you want on the backs of these front seats. Now, when I got in the back seat as a full-grown adult the other day to ride back there and see what it was like, I'm 5'8.5", and I had a teeny bit of legroom, but a decent amount of headroom. The headroom was pretty nice back there. And if you were using the backs of these seats to store tools or different things that you wanted back there, I would have basically no legroom at all. But since there's nothing back there, I was fine. I don't really have any complaints about the back seat in this vehicle. This is a two-door Bronco. You're probably not going to put a lot of people in the back seat, and if they're back there, they're going to be there for a short amount of time. However, my only real issue with the back seat is because this is a two-door, you have a little pull tab on the front seats that you can use to bring them down. And when I was trying to get out the other day, I did the pull tab on the passenger side seat, and it collapsed the seat forward, but it's also supposed to move the seat forward, not just collapse the back. And it didn't move the seat forward. So there was nothing I could do. I had to get down there and try to reach the pull tab to pull the seat forward, but I ended up just asking for help. And I do believe if you have a two-door car and you have a pull tab to bring the seat down, which you need to have, that tab needs to be able to do everything. The person in the back seat shouldn't have to say, hey, somebody in the front seat, can you pull this seat forward so I can get out? That's really my only complaint. Other than that, this interior styling is decent. Now let's run through the controls inside this Bronco, and I just want to quickly run you through some highlights. We have USB-C charging and a USB-A charging port up front, so you can use whatever charger you want. This center console is so deep that I can fit my giant water bottle in it, and my water bottle is huge, mind you. I love a deep center console. In addition to that, we have physical climate controls, which is fantastic. And in those physical climate controls, we have seat heaters, which are strong. I love a strong seat heater, and a steering wheel heater, but we do not have seat coolers. And I love that these seat heaters are strong, and I just love the fact that a Detroit winter made someone decide to make this seat heater strong, because sometimes you just want to really heat up your back, and I can do that in here. In addition to that, we have some very Bronco-like controls in here and Bronco-like features. We have up front a little screw where you can screw in your GoPro so you can show it what you're doing inside the vehicle, outside of the vehicle, or whatever. And then in addition to that part where you can screw in your GoPro, there is a USB-C charging port where you can plug in your GoPro and keep it charged, or plug in whatever you need to plug in that you have screwed up there to keep it charged without having a wire in the way. That is so well thought out. In addition to that, we have a bunch of aux buttons up here, aux 1 through 6, which you can wire your own auxiliary appliances to this vehicle if you want to put in lights or anything like that. And you can just flick those switches easily to turn those appliances on. And I think that is fantastic. In addition to that, I already showed you, you can easily remove the fenders and easily remove the roof in this vehicle. And I think that's great because that's what this vehicle is about. I started this video by mentioning James May's recent review of this Bronco, where he drove it on the highway and then he said, man, if you're driving this car on the highway, it sucks. And you know, he's not totally wrong that it's not the best vehicle to drive on the highway, because this is not a highway cruiser. However, I don't think that that shows the full breadth of what this vehicle is. So I want to do a little bit of point counterpoint. One big point that he made was that when you're driving this vehicle on the road, it is very stiff, but also kind of feels like it's going to fall over. Those things are accurate. At the same time, when I'm driving an off-roader, I would rather it feel stiff. I would rather the suspension be stiffer, like in this Bronco or like in the Toyota 4Runner, because when you have that really soft off-roader suspension on the road, it feels very sluggish. You have a lot of forward and backward weight shift when you accelerate and when you brake, and it just feels really on the road. I love the Honda Passport Trail Sport. I think it is very capable off-road and fun to drive. However, because it is so soft, it feels extremely sluggish when you're speeding up or slowing down on the road, like when you go up to a stop sign, because you have so much weight shift. And yes, this vehicle is tall, and sometimes when you go like this, it feels a little wobbly. That's what you get in an off-roader. That's just kind of the reality. James also said that this Bronco has too much tire. As a refresher, this is on 35-inch tires, and I totally disagree about this vehicle having too much tire. 35s in America are perfect. You can crush curbs. You feel invincible. You feel a little ignorant sometimes, but you feel really powerful and you can do whatever you want to do. And at the end of the day, you want big tires when you're off-roading. You want something like this. This is the reason I take a Bronco off-road and I leave my Miata on the road, because my Miata is on 15-inch wheels. It's really, really small and really, really close to the ground. And when you're off-roading, you don't want that. So the 35-inch tires are really good for this vehicle. And I tell you what, the sense of power you feel is great. Now let's run through a few on-road driving characteristics. The acceleration in this Bronco from this V6 is actually pretty decent, especially on these knobbier 35-inch tires. You put down the accelerator and it's not super impressive, but it'll just slightly kick you back in your seat, and it is plenty. The steering on the highway feels like jello. You'll be moving the wheel that way and your wheels will be going that way. But again, this is an off-roader. It's not supposed to have that pinpoint steering. This vehicle is a little rattly if you go over certain bumps at certain speeds. And in addition to being a little rattly, you also at high speeds have really loud wind noise. This is very common in off-roaders because you're upright, you're boxy, the wind is absolutely smacking you, and it just goes shh the whole time you're driving. But this is not a highway cruiser. It gets 17.6 miles per gallon. That's what I currently am getting in this vehicle. And in addition to that, it not being a highway cruiser, I think the biggest downside of that, I can excuse the wind noise, I can excuse the steering, everything like that. But something that Ford is really good at is driving technology and driver assistance technology. And Ford should have really good technology in this vehicle. So we have what's called lane keep assist in this vehicle. And lane keep assist basically ping pongs you to keep you in the lane. So you have it turned on, and if you're veering to the side of the road, it'll ping pong you back into your lane. And then if you veer too close to the center, it'll ping pong you back. Lane keeping is different from lane centering, where the vehicle uses all of its cameras to keep this vehicle in between the lane lines. And it's really nice to be able to have that lane centering, because then you don't have to put in the minute little inputs to keep yourself on the highway. This is a lane keep vehicle, not a lane center vehicle. And with all the cameras this Bronco has on it, this should be a lane centering vehicle, even if it's not a highway cruiser. And I'm just really disappointed that it doesn't have that. But that's really it. This isn't a highway cruiser. It's not supposed to be, and that's okay. And overall, this Bronco is really good. This Bronco really, really impressed me when I first drove it in June 2021, and it returned to the American market, and it still really impresses me today because it is great off-road, and it is not as bad at 70 miles per hour on the highway as you would expect a great off-roader to be. When you have a great off-roader, you have to make concessions, and those concessions come in the form of high-speed road driving. And this wind noise is not as bad as it could be. The ride is not as bad as it could be. The acceleration is not as bad as it could be. It is decent for what this vehicle is, and then you take it off-road, and this thing is absolutely amazing. It's so good at what it's supposed to do. And if you buy this vehicle for something it's not supposed to do, unfortunately, that's not the vehicle's problem. That's not what the vehicle was designed for. And I think it's unfortunate online when we have this tendency to have a really defined take one way or another. This vehicle is great. This vehicle is bad, because that leads you to drive a Bronco on a highway and say, man, this sucks something serious. And it doesn't. It's really, really good. You just have to recognize that vehicles are always going to have strong points and weak points, like anything in life, and nothing is just black, white, on, off, even though the algorithm wants us to say it is. Now I want to do a little bit of light off-roading in this Ford Bronco Stroppe and tell you about the extensive experience I have off-roading it pretty hardcore. That starts in June 2021 at the launch of the vehicle, and I was so impressed, not only by the performance of the Bronco, but also at what Ford was doing with it. They had all kinds of displays of like 200 Ford-backed aftermarket parts that were available for this vehicle at launch, so that people did not have to wait for aftermarket parts. They could extensively customize this in the Bronco configurator and then buy all of these parts immediately when it launched. Not only that, but on the Monroney for this Bronco that I am driving right now, there is a QR code for something called the Bronco Off-Rodeo. I have done this twice, once in Austin, Texas, and once at the base of the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And when you buy a new Bronco, on that Monroney, you get a QR code that says, hey, you can do the Bronco Off-Rodeo because you bought this vehicle. And yes, your travel is not included, your lodging is not included, but especially if you're going to be near one of these off-rodeos or if you live near them, it's so useful, because think about it, so many people buy vehicles without knowledge of what those vehicles can do, and the Bronco can do so much. Whether it's a sports car or an off-roader or anything, it is so important to know what your vehicle can do. And you can go to this off-rodeo and drive these Ford supplied vehicles to learn what they can do. That is fantastic, and that's such a cool offering. And I really like the Bronco program because of that. The Bronco also has all of these different off-roading features and settings, and I want to first walk you through the GOAT modes. GOAT stands for go over any terrain, and when I use the GOAT mode dial, I can go from normal driving mode to slippery driving mode to eco to sand. Then we have mud and ruts. Then we have Baja for high-speed off-road driving, and then we have rock crawl for low-speed rocks and boulders. Now, what these different modes will do is they will basically pick your ideal drive settings for the vehicle, whether it's for high, for low, too high, anything like that, and it will put it in those settings. In addition to doing that, you also have locking differentials and stabilizer bars, and to be able to choose those GOAT modes that basically say, hey, what situation are you in? You put it in that setting and it'll just do all of your settings for you. That's fantastic for people who are new to off-roading or don't know as much about these different modes. The Ford Bronco feels brutish on road and off. Something I think that's super cool about this vehicle though is that the suspension is tuned in a way to where you can be off-road and you can be on this difficult terrain, and it doesn't just turn you into a nauseous bobblehead. It feels fine to be going over rocks and bumps and everything like that. And the other thing that I think is so cool about the Bronco and other modern off-roaders is that they make off-roading so accessible. The drive modes and the fact that you can just choose what kind of condition you're in, like slippery or mud or ruts or rocks, and it'll just set up all of your different driving commands for that. That makes it to where people can learn how to off-road and they can go out and they can have fun, and it's more accessible to them so that they can learn more in the future. That's awesome. Now that we've driven the 2025 Ford Bronco Stroppe, it's time to give it a grade. Welcome to Alanis's report card. The exterior on this vehicle gets an A. This particular paint scheme is a little loud for me because it's very obvious when it's you when you pull into a parking lot, but I think it works for a lot of people, and the modern Bronco styling just looks really great for what it is. The interior is a B. I absolutely love a lot of the features in there, the easy to access buttons, and also the off-road features like the drains in the floor for when you get water in there. I also love that we have tactile controls for the important things. But that is a utilitarian interior and it's not for everyone, so it gets a middle of the road grade. The performance on this Bronco is an A. It is amazing off-road. It is better than you would think on-road. And honestly, if they just put a good lane centering system in that car, I would give it an A+ because it's really good at what it is supposed to do. The value on this particular Stroppe is a B-. I think the Bronco, for what it can do and for all of its features, is a good value if you get the right trim, but this is a very high-priced trim because it is a specialty thing and Ford expects buyers to pay more for this paint scheme and for the history. Therefore, on this specific trim, it gets a lower value grade. Would I take this Bronco on a road trip? No, I would not. It does not have that great lane centering, and the wind noise is really something else. It is so loud, but I do love just driving it around town and driving it off-road, and that's what it's meant for. And overall, this gets a B+. I think it's a shame that the value on this particular trim brings this report card into the B's, because if this were a better value trim, it would easily be an A, and I think it deserves an A. This one's just a little too expensive to put it that high.
The Ford Bronco's 25-year disappearance before its triumphant return to the car market is a reminder that if we're to appreciate greatness, we have to remember that it could be gone at any moment. We can't be numb to things that aren't forever. The new Bronco is an off-road icon with the digestibility of an everyday vehicle, and it's here, right now, to show us that. We just have to be willing to look.
And remember, unless you really hate your car, you should never take it through a non-touchless automatic car wash, even if it's the longest in the world and even if there is a beaver on the front of it.